Let us call on our good friend and political analyst Dick Morris, the author of the new book, Power Grab, Obama's Dangerous Plan for a One-Party Nation. Dick, as we digest this developing story, your reaction to what has happened in Paris and both the national security and political fallout of this attack.
Well, in a way, it's been a positive development in the war on terror because the attack took place in France, and it probably will reinforce and strengthen the determination of our allies to be aggressive in going after these terrorist groups. Although you can never tell. When there was a train bombing in Madrid right before the Spanish election about 10 years ago, Spain just folded completely, pulled its troops out of Iraq, and said, we're not fighting the war on terror anymore. I hope
Dick,
the French don't have that reaction.
John here, and I wanted to ask you specifically about that. You know, this might be an opportunity for a lot of people in France to say, we don't want to be a part of this. France, of course, has been out front. They've been one of the first countries to respond and join in with the coalition-led airstrikes against ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Do you think that the resolve will be there, this will strengthen that, or do you think there will be a lot of folks in France who say, you know, we're done now?
Well, I think there's always going to be that element, certainly in France, because of how horrifically it suffered in World War I and World War II, and it left a legacy of strong anti-war sentiment. And don't forget, about a quarter of the French electorate is communist at heart. They voted for communists when they could. But I think the fact that the attack was on a magazine in France, a satirical magazine that had made fun of the Prophet, I think that that is going to strike a chord with the French as opposing their liberties and conscribing what they can read and absorb and laugh at. And I think that that's going to strike closer to home than had the militants, for example, struck an air base or French army facility.
Well, as you talk about it striking closer to home,
there's a dividing line in French culture between the army and the literary world. The army is regarded by many Frenchmen as sort of the enemy. There have been coups d'etats, it's been a separate force, and in many cases it does not enjoy a lot of support from the French people. On the other hand, the literary side, the left bank crowd, loves their writers and their magazines, and I think that this will have an impact on them because it really is a free speech issue, not just a terrorist issue.
Dick, if I might, there is another division in French society between native Frenchmen and the influx of immigrants from Muslim nations, and it is something that has never really been fraught with assimilation. In fact, some refer to all of Europe, perhaps a future of Eurostan. Will the French move now assertively to have assimilation of these newcomers into their society? What do you expect to happen there?
Well, there needs to be, and I hope that they will. It's very important that we understand that the French Muslims are very different from the American Muslims. In the United States, they're largely assimilated. They largely live among us. There may be a concentration around a particular mosque, but largely they're constantly intermingling with us meaning non-Muslims. In Paris, for example, you have a ring around the city of Islamic suburbs where the French police dare not go. There really are no municipal services there. The courts don't work there. The Islamic courts patrol. Sharia law really governs. And there's been no real effort to assimilate them. The hallmark has been diversity, of having all different groups living side by side, but not a melting pot. And increasingly, I think the Europeans are realizing they need to have a melting pot. Merkel, a few years ago, rejected the idea of diversity and embraced the idea of assimilation. And I think that this will hasten that. But what the French need to do is to end these no-go areas around Paris and really integrate them into society. I think the other point that you make is a very good one, though, J.D. I think that this will strengthen the increasing restiveness within the European public against unlimited immigration from Turkey, because Turkey is a member of NATO, and it's easy to get in from Turkey, and it's easy to get into Turkey from Iran and other countries. So you have this constant flow of immigrants, and once they're in the European Union, they can go anywhere in the European Union without even passing any frontiers. And I think the impetus among the British to withdraw from the European Union by the United Kingdom Independent Party, UKIP, that won 17% of the vote in the last election, I think is a very strong one. And I think that it will find an echo in France, particularly as a result of this incident.
And that movement is in the United Kingdom, as you mentioned, also in France and elsewhere in Europe. There is a growing sentiment of concern about this unchecked immigration into these countries. Dick, what do you expect the immediate reaction to be from the French president, Francois Hollande now? We know that he's condemned the terror attack, but moving ahead, what do you expect out of him later today?
I think there will be renewed or an increase in French military activity in the Middle East against ISIS. I don't think he can not respond. And I think that this may provide an impetus for an increasing focus on ground troops. I remember that when President Clinton was talking to President Chirac about the appropriate response in Bosnia when that crisis was brewing, Clinton only wanted to do airstrikes, but Chirac wanted ground troops. And he even at one point waxed eloquent about the honor of France required that they put troops in there, not just bomb from 30,000 feet. And Clinton told them to stuff it. But I think the French are more willing than Americans have ever been to commit ground troops. They already have ground troops in a lot of African countries.
And
Chad
on that
and
note,
others.
Dick, forgive me for interrupting. We're up against a break. We're going to ask you to stay through the break. We'll continue our discussion, specifically the fallout here in the United States from today's terror attack in Paris. That's just ahead on America's Forum. Continue our conversation now with Dick Morris, who joins us from Philadelphia. Dick, of course, the author of the new book, Power Grab, Obama's Dangerous Plan for a One-Party Nation. Dick, let's come back to the fallout of this Paris attack here at home. What do you expect to see immediately in the days ahead from Homeland Security and this administration?
I think Homeland Security had better be on its toes to stop similar attacks in the United States. But I think that generally ISIS is a huge problem for Obama and for the Democratic Party.
Dick, you mentioned something
the
about...
one thing,
Go ahead.
because the one thing that was very clear as Bush left office was that Iraq was over, that his surge had really worked. And then Obama put a period on it in a paragraph by pulling all the troops out unwisely. And now it's erupted again, and it's erupted because of Obama's precipitous action in withdrawing troops. And I think that this increases the focus on that. And anything that increases the focus on that has to hurt Obama and the architect of his foreign policy, Hillary Clinton.
Dick, you mentioned the prospect of France putting ground troops in Iraq or Syria. Do you think this also forces the president's hand and puts us one step closer to, I know we have troops there already, but real confirmed ground troops now, some sort of decisive reaction and response militarily to this today?
I don't think this will bring that about. I think it might move us closer in that sense. I think that you would need an actual attack on the United States. But I think that inevitably we have to put ground troops there because it's obvious that the aerial attacks, while they might be effective in stopping the spread of ISIS, are ineffective in driving ISIS away from where it's already occupied a huge swath of northern Iraq.
And as you lay out the geopolitical consideration, there are also political campaigns that seem to be ongoing. Dick, your new column goes into more elaboration on a topic you brought up here on this program the other day, the interesting dynamic with Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton and how those establishment brand names may play out. Give us your take at this point in time.
Well, imagine you have a bookshelf, and on the middle of the bookshelf you have a bunch of hardcover books and you have a bookend under them. And then you remove one of the bookends. Not only will they fall this way, they'll also fall that way and knock out the bookend that's still there. Hillary and Jeb are really codependent. Each one so embodies the negatives that exist on the other one that their candidacy assures that they won't be attacked on their leading vulnerabilities. How does Jeb Bush go after Hillary Clinton for trading on her husband's name and not having done anything in her own right? How does Hillary Clinton, with her Wall Street background, go after Jeb Bush for being tied to the establishment? How do Bush and Clinton, both in their 60s, go after each other as being old politics, not a younger generation? Rick Santorum made a key point in the 12 election lead-up. He said Romney could never attack Obama over Obamacare because of Romneycare in Massachusetts, and he was right. So Romney could only hit on the economy, couldn't do a two-front and talk about Obamacare as well. I think that Bush would be unable to attack Hillary on her leading vulnerabilities.
We've got about a minute left to go. Jeb Bush has been out there clearly trying to present the image he's going to run for president. Mike Huckabee kind of weighed in, but there hasn't been a lot of other discussion from anybody else. Is it smarter for the prospective candidates to wait a little bit, or should they go ahead and get in because Jeb is really defining the conversation right now? We got about a minute left.
Well, Bush and Huckabee both needed to come in early because they both have constituencies that have been languishing that they need to mobilize and keep in their bucket and not let them go to somebody else. Neither one ran in 2012, and the Bush brand has been on hold since 2008, as has the Huckabee brand. And you have guys like Romney that were thinking of coming in, and Christie that could take a lot of the Bush vote. And you have guys like Santorum and Cruz and other conservatives that could steal some of Huckabee's base. So they both needed to jump in there and say, hey, wait a minute, guys. You've been my troops. Stay where you are. I'm coming.
All right. Dick Morris, as always, we appreciate your insights and analysis. And a reminder that you can get your copy of the best-selling book by Dick Morris, Power Grab, by visiting the website powergrab411.com. When we return, we'll continue the discussion on today's Paris terror attack with Pete Hoekstra.